So, this is week 9 on the creation calendar, and in this episode, we cross over from month 2 on the calendar into month 3. So, there will be a monthly segment with reminders, review of feasts, and suggestions for this month's studies. We will also review the events of week 9 on the creation calendar. What is really interesting this week is that both Abraham and Ezekiel were given a vision and communicated with Yahuwah on the first day of the month. Abraham was promised an heir in a dream and one to become the eternal king of Yasharel. And Ezekiel was given a prophecy for the king of Egypt. That's why I call this episode the Day of the Two Kings. Amazing those overlaps in time. There will be some insights into Ezekiel's prophecy that are shared that you've probably not heard before. So let's get started. We hope this blesses you in your studies.
Hello there, this is Joshua, your host this week. This is the beginning of month 3, so we're just going to do a brief breakdown of what happens in month 3. The counting of the Omer ends. The Feast of Shabuah, first fruits of wheat this month. Events in Scripture are Hezekiah's reformed kingdom begins its first fruits. Now, and there's also the beginning of the new month. You want to blow your shofars if you have them, or do some yelling and say praise Yah, and the memorial blowing of shofars for the feast and festivals. Things to consider, topic of study this month. What does the seed of Abraham do? It was noted in Jubilees that Jacob took care of his parents during the intercalary days by sending provisions and things they needed. This is a perfect time to review the good character traits of the seed of Abraham. Be sure to watch this month for our release of a video study that will be specifically on this subject. Word study of nakedness. When Noah celebrates the feast of Shabuah with his first batch of wine, he is uncovered and his nakedness exposed. This event occurs in week 11. Be sure to read the accounts in Genesis and Jubilees to compare. Additional reading suggestions are given relating to the word nakedness. Chronological harmony. Exodus events. Month 3 begins a real challenge in the reconciliation of the storylines and dates in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Jubilees. Scholars have been researching and attempting this for hundreds of years. We have taken the storylines and dates from all these books into a chart to attempt to match and synchronize them. The events of the Exodus have been placed on the calendar as best as can be calculated so far. If you believe and can prove a different date, please feel free to contact us to compare research. Topic of study, power of the voice in the Scriptures. It is interesting to note in the events of this month that power has been demonstrated associated with speaking words. That is so important. The Israelites were afraid of Yahuwah's voice at Mount Sinai. Roman soldiers were blown down by the power of Yahusha's voice in the garden when he was arrested, and the people were afraid of the prophet Samuel and Yahuwah when he called for rain and thunder to come down on their wheat harvest and feast celebration. Okay. Now for this week's events. We are on the 57th day of the year, the 9th week, 4th day of the week. And the 4th day of the week being a Wednesday. This is flood day 11 of 40 days and nights in Noah's experience in year 1. In year 2, on this day, he exits the ark. Noah exits the ark and begins to construct an altar along with all the other tasks of bringing everything off the ark. King Hezekiah and children of Israel in Jerusalem celebrate extra days 6 and 7. We have the counting of the Omer, day 33, on day 28 of the second month. King Hezekiah and children of Israel in Jerusalem celebrate the extra last day of 7 days. They did 2 days of unleavened bread. 2 weeks of unleavened bread. In year 1 of the flood day, this is 13 of 40 days and nights. And on the Sabbath, in year 1 of flood day, it's the 14th. 14th flood day. Now, on the beginning of the 3rd month, we have the flood is continuing. Abraham receives the promise of an heir in his dream on the 1st day of the 3rd month. After the rescue of Lot, he has a dream receiving promise of an heir and instructions to offer a sacrifice. Genesis shows Abram's belief in Yahuwah as righteousness, and Jubilees shows Abram following the instructions for the mid-month feast offering. These accounts do not line up exactly. Jacob leaves Haran during the famine for Egypt and heads first towards the well of the oath. This may sound odd to you if you're not familiar with the book of Jubilees and the differences between it and Genesis. Ezekiel receives a prophecy. A future prophecy given to Ezekiel for the king of Egypt happened on this day, the 1st day of the 3rd month. And this is a can of worms. If you start looking into this prophecy, it's a deep dive, more than we can do today. Let's just look at the bullet points. It is a warning against Pharaoh, king of Egypt. It appears to be very cryptic, with extreme prophecy speech, substitution of words for actual meaning. The warning comes in the year 587 BC on the summer solstice. Parts of Ezekiel 29, 30, 31, and 32 are tied along with Jeremiah in 44, 45, and 46 of this prophecy. Many believe much of these prophecies never came about, but some also believe part of them are end-time prophecies. There is a gap in evidence from both Babel and Egypt, as the book The Sacred Bridge, mentioned in a past bonus section, says that in 568 to 567 BC, Babel invaded Egypt again with Kittim Greek mercenaries, that both nations' records are so badly damaged as to not be able to verify the outcome. That's on page 270 of the book, The Sacred Bridge. There are other records from the time that state Egypt was totally decimated and had a 40-year exile that was also prophesied. Egypt has a history of destroying the historical records they do not like. I have here a little breakdown for you of the different pharaohs during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. Necho II ruled from 610 to 595 BC, and Nebuchadnezzar beat him in Syria and eventually pushed him back to Egypt. At the time, Egypt had conquered the Levant all the way up into Syria. This Psamtik II ruled from 595 to 589 BC, battled Cush, and pushed the boundary of Egypt to the south. He had no interactions known with Nebuchadnezzar at the time. Apries, the son of Psamtik II, ruled from 589 to 570, fell victim to civil war in Egypt. During this period, Nebuchadnezzar has his living as a beast of the field curse. Amasis II, a general that was proclaimed king during the Civil War. During the war, Egypt had 2 kings, and Jeremiah does have a prophecy about that. Ruled from 570 to 526 BC. Now this is interesting because you're going to find out in a minute. After this period, Egypt, Babylon, and Lydia make an alliance to try and stop the Persian Mede upcoming dynasty. Amasis then appears to be a puppet king. In 568 to 567, Nebuchadnezzar went into Egypt and, according to some records, totally devastated the nation. Almost nobody was left alive in the nation. Almost everyone that didn't die in the fighting was taken up to Babel. And one could spend months digging into this. It appears time and efforts have been made to cover things up. There is a book called Displaced Dynasties. Chapter 1 is Nebuchadnezzar's Wars, and they talk greatly about this era. The next 2 days are counting the Omer and the recording the days of the flood. Hope you've have a good week. We'll see you next time.